The conference room on the 42nd floor smelled of leather, aged whiskey, and the particular tension that preceded violence. Simone Hayes kept her eyes down as she poured wine into crystal glasses, her movements precise and practiced. She'd learned in the 3 years since she started working for Min-jae Kang that invisibility was survival in rooms like this. 10 men sat around the obsidian table. Half wore the sharp Italian suits that marked Viktor Petrov's organization. The other half belonged to Min-jae Korean, Russian, and American, all loyal to the man at the head of the table who hadn't looked up from the contract in front of him. Min-jae Kang, 34 years old, built like a weapon wrapped in Armani. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble if marble could look that dangerous. In 3 years of working in his penthouse, Simone had never seen him raise his voice, had never seen him lose control. She'd also never seen him smile. Not really, not the kind of smile that reached his eyes. She moved around the table, her presence as unremarkable as the furniture. That was the point. Rich men talked freely around housekeepers, around maids, around women they didn't consider important enough to guard their words against. The dock territories, Viktor Petrov said, his Russian accent thick as molasses. He was older than Min-jae by maybe 15 years, with silver threading through black hair and eyes like a shark dead, flat, constantly calculating. You control shipping from Oakland to Sacramento. I want a percentage. No. Min-jae's voice was soft, but it carried the weight of finality. Simone filled Victor's glass, careful not to let her hand shake. She could feel the tension ratcheting higher, could sense the subtle shift of Victor's men positioning themselves for potential conflict. I'm offering you a generous partnership, Viktor continued, spreading his hands in a gesture meant to seem reasonable. 20% of my Eastern European imports, clean money, legitimate businesses. All I ask is access to your infrastructure. My infrastructure is not for sale. Min-jae finally looked up, and Simone felt the temperature in the room drop. His eyes dark, absolutely cold, fixed on Viktor with the kind of focus that preceded bloodshed. Neither is my territory, my shipping routes, or my goodwill. Find another way to move your product. Simone moved to Min-jae's side to refill his glass. Her hand was steady, her expression neutral. She'd perfected this mask over 3 years. The invisible woman, the help, the one nobody really saw, except Min-jae saw her. She felt it in the way he angled slightly toward her as she poured, giving her space. In the barely perceptible nod he gave when she finished acknowledgement, when most men in his position never noticed their staff at all. In 3 years, he'd never raised his voice to her, never treated her as less than human. It was such a small thing, such a basic standard. But in Simone's experience, small kindnesses from powerful men were rarer than diamonds. Everything has a price, Kang, Viktor said, his patience clearly thinning. Name yours. I just did. No. Viktor's jaw tightened. His eyes tracked Simone as she moved back toward the sidebar. She felt the weight of his attention like oil on her skin, assessing, calculating, reducing her to commodity. Interesting, Viktor said slowly. You claim nothing is for sale, yet you have a black woman serving us. In Korea this is unusual, exotic even. Simone's spine went rigid. She kept her face carefully blank, but her heart kicked against her ribs. Min-jae's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. A subtle tension that made Viktor's men shift in their seats. Miss Hayes is my employee, Min-jae said, his tone deceptively mild. Not a conversation piece. Miss Hayes, Viktor repeated, like he was tasting the name. Tell me, Miss Hayes, do you enjoy working for Mr. Kang? Simone knew better than to engage. Knew better than to make herself memorable or interesting or anything other than invisible. But Viktor was staring at her with expectation, and refusing to answer would be its own kind of answer. Yes, sir, she said quietly, keeping her eyes down. Mr. Kang is a fair employer. Fair. Viktor smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd just spotted weakness. How wonderfully diplomatic. She's well-trained, Kang. Beautiful, too. That skin like dark chocolate, those curves. His eyes traveled over Simone's body with proprietary interest that made her skin crawl. Tell me, is she as obedient in private as she is in public? The words hung in the air like a lit fuse. Simone forced herself to remain still, to breathe normally, to not react. She'd endured worse, had survived worse. This was just words. Just another powerful man thinking he could say anything to a woman he considered beneath him. Careful, Petrov. Min-jae's voice was velvet over steel. You're 30 seconds away from making this meeting very uncomfortable. I'm simply appreciating your assets, Viktor said, still smiling that shark smile. You won't negotiate on territory. Fine. But surely we can find other areas of agreement. I have connections in Moscow, in St. Petersburg. Men who appreciate exotic beauty. Men who would pay extremely well for someone like her. The room went absolutely silent. Simone's blood turned to ice. Human trafficking. He was talking about human trafficking. About buying her like she was merchandise. About selling her to men who would— Name your price, Viktor said, leaning back in his chair. His tone was casual, like he was negotiating for a car, not a human being. For the maid. I'll triple whatever you're paying her. Consider it a gesture of goodwill between organizations. Simone couldn't help it. Her eyes lifted, finding Min-jae's face. He was looking at her. Actually looking at her. Not through her the way most powerful men did with their staff. His dark eyes held hers for 3 seconds, long enough for her to see something blazing behind that controlled exterior. Something that looked almost like fury. Then he turned to Viktor. And when he spoke, his voice could have frozen fire. She's not for sale, Min-jae said. Each word precise, deliberate. She's mine. The possessive declaration hit Simone like a physical force. Mine. The word reverberated through her chest, making her pulse race for reasons she didn't want to examine. Viktor's smile widened. Everything has a price, Kang. I'll pay $1 million. American. For one black maid. That's generous even by your standards. You're not listening. Min-jae stood, and suddenly the room felt smaller. He moved with the lethal grace of a predator, each step controlled and purposeful, until he was standing between Viktor and Simone. Miss Hayes is under my protection. That means she's untouchable. That means if you so much as look at her the wrong way again, I will take it as a declaration of war. For a maid? Viktor laughed, but there was an edge to it now. Uncertainty. You're willing to risk our business relationship over hired help? I'm willing to risk much more than that, Min-jae said softly. Test me and find out. The two men stared at each other across 3 feet of expensive carpet. The tension was so thick Simone could barely breathe. Viktor's men had their hands near their weapons. Min-jae's security detail stationed at the doors had shifted into ready positions. One wrong word and this room would become a battlefield. Finally, Viktor raised his hands in mock surrender. My apologies, Kang. I didn't realize the woman was so valuable to you. I meant no disrespect. Yes, you did. Min-jae's expression didn't soften. This meeting is over. My people will show you out. Viktor stood slowly, straightening his suit jacket. His eyes found Simone one more time, lingering with an intensity that made her want to run. Perhaps we'll meet again, Miss Hayes, under different circumstances. No, Min-jae said flatly. You won't. Viktor smiled that dead shark smile and left, his entourage following like well-trained dogs. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded impossibly loud in the silence. Simone stood frozen, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She was shaking, actually shaking. The adrenaline that she'd been suppressing for the last 10 minutes was flooding through her system, making her hands tremble as she reached for the wine bottle she'd abandoned. Leave it. She turned to find Min-jae watching her. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the darkness in his eyes that suggested violence barely contained. I'm sorry, she said automatically. Years of survival had taught her that apologizing first, even when you'd done nothing wrong, often prevented worse. I didn't mean to cause problems between you and— You didn't cause anything, Min-jae interrupted. His voice was still soft, but there was an undercurrent of anger that wasn't directed at her. Viktor did, and he'll regret it. Simone swallowed hard. He offered you $1 million. He could have offered me 10 million. The answer would be the same. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. I'm just your housekeeper. You could have— You're not just anything. Min-jae stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle with notes of bergamot and cedar. You work for me. That means you're under my protection. Anyone who threatens you threatens me. That's non-negotiable. Simone stared at him, trying to process what he was saying, trying to understand why a man like Min-jae Kang, powerful, dangerous, untouchable, would risk a business relationship over his housekeeper. I don't understand, she whispered. Something flickered across Min-jae's face, something that might have been frustration or longing or both. I know you don't, but you will. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently brushed a strand of her braided hair that had come loose back behind her ear. The touch was brief, barely there, but it sent electricity racing across Simone's skin. "Take the rest of the day off," he said quietly. "My driver will take you wherever you want to go. Tomorrow we'll talk about increasing your security detail." "Security detail? For a housekeeper?" "For you," Min-jae corrected. "Viktor doesn't handle rejection well. Until I deal with him properly, you'll have protection." "Deal with him?" Simone's eyes widened. "You're not going to, you can't start a war over." "I can and I will." Min-jae's expression was absolutely certain. "Viktor crossed a line. There are consequences. But that's not something you need to worry about. Your only job is to stay safe. Can you do that for me?" The way he phrased it, asking, not commanding, made something in Simone's chest tighten. When had anyone ever asked her to stay safe like her safety mattered? Like she mattered? "Yes," she heard herself say. "I can do that." "Good." Min-jae stepped back, creating professional distance once more, but his eyes lingered on her face for a moment longer. "I meant what I said, Simone. You're mine to protect, and I always protect what's mine." Then he turned and walked out, leaving Simone standing in the conference room with a racing heart and a million questions she couldn't answer. What had just happened? And why did the word mine, from Min-jae Kang's lips, feel less like possession and more like a promise? Simone's world. Simone Hayes had learned early that survival meant making yourself small, quiet, unremarkable. The kind of person powerful people looked past rather than at. She'd been doing it since she was 16, since her mother died and left her alone in Chicago with no money, no family, and a face that men seemed to think gave them permission to touch what wasn't theirs. She'd learned to navigate the world with her head down and her guard up. Learned that kindness from strangers usually came with a price. Learned that the only person she could trust was herself. At 28, she'd perfected the art of invisibility. She lived in a studio apartment in Oakland. Small, clean, affordable. She worked 6 days a week for Min-jae Kang, keeping his penthouse spotless, preparing his meals, managing his household with quiet efficiency. She was good at her job, took pride in it, and she'd thought, naively, that being good at her job was enough. Then Viktor Petrov had looked at her like she was merchandise, and everything had shifted. Now, standing in her small apartment the evening after the disastrous meeting, Simone couldn't stop replaying Min-jae's words. "She's not for sale. She's mine." The declaration had been possessive, absolute. And it should have terrified her she'd spent too many years avoiding men who thought they had the right to claim women like property. But coming from Min-jae, it hadn't felt like ownership. It had felt like protection, like a line drawn in the sand that said, "This far and no further." Simone moved through her evening routine on autopilot. Shower, food she barely tasted, chamomile tea that did nothing to calm her racing thoughts. She should have been thinking about finding a new job, putting distance between herself and whatever was brewing between Min-jae and Viktor. Instead, she found herself remembering the first time she'd met Min-jae 3 years ago. She'd been working for a cleaning service, assigned to maintain a penthouse in the city's most exclusive building. The agency had warned her. "The client is very private, very particular. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't touch anything personal. Be invisible." She'd expected another entitled rich man who'd treat her like furniture. Had steeled herself for wandering eyes or inappropriate comments, or the 1,000 small cruelties that came with being a black woman working in wealthy white spaces. Min-jae had been different. He'd looked at her when he spoke to her, had asked her name, her preferences, whether the hours worked for her schedule, had paid her double the agency rate and told her she could work directly for him if she wanted no middleman, better pay, stable schedule. It had seemed too good to be true. And Simone had learned the hard way that things that seemed too good to be true usually were. But she'd been desperate. And Min-jae had been different. Professional, respectful. In 3 years, he'd never made her uncomfortable, never touched her inappropriately, never looked at her like she was anything other than a valued employee. At least, not until recently. Over the past few months, Simone had started noticing things. The way Min-jae's eyes would linger on her face when she brought him morning coffee. The way he'd started asking her opinion on things, what flowers looked best in the entryway, whether she preferred the apartment warmer or cooler, what music she liked. Small things, seemingly insignificant things, but they'd added up to something that felt dangerously like attention. And today, he'd called her mine in front of 10 dangerous men, had risked a business relationship to protect her, had looked at her like she was precious instead of expendable. Simone didn't know what to do with that. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Min-jae. I had my assistant program my personal number into your phone. Call me if you need anything. Day or night. I mean that." Her heart did something complicated in her chest. She stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. "Thank you for today. I'm sorry I caused trouble." The response came immediately. "You didn't cause anything. Stop apologizing for existing, Simone. You have more right to take up space in this world than men like Viktor do." She read the message 3 times, then typed, "Why did you protect me?" The response took longer this time. "Because you're important. And because I wanted to." Simone's hands were shaking again. She set the phone down, pressed her palms against her thighs, tried to breathe normally. This was dangerous. This feeling blooming in her chest, warm and terrifying and completely inappropriate. Min-jae was her employer. A powerful man. A dangerous man. The kind of man whose world she had no business entering. But when he'd stood between her and Viktor, when he'd said mine, with such absolute conviction, Simone had felt something she hadn't felt in years. She'd felt safe. Min-jae's world. Min-jae Kang's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the Blackstone Tower. 12,000 square feet of glass, steel, and carefully curated emptiness. Modern art on the walls, pieces that cost more than most people made in a decade. Furniture designed by architects whose names carried weight. A view of the bay that was worth millions on its own. It was beautiful. Sterile. Cold. The only warmth came from Simone. Min-jae stood at the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city, a glass of Yamazaki single malt in his hand. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere down there, Simone was in her small apartment, probably still processing what had happened today. He'd overplayed his hand. He knew that. Had revealed too much, too soon. "She's mine" wasn't something you said about your housekeeper. It was something you said about someone who mattered, someone precious. And Simone Hayes had become precious to him, though he couldn't pinpoint exactly when it had happened. Maybe it was that first day 3 years ago, when she'd looked him in the eye despite clearly being terrified, and told him with quiet dignity that she needed to know what his expectations were because she took pride in doing her job well. Something about that simple statement, the professionalism, the self-respect had caught his attention. Or maybe it was 6 months later, when he'd come home late to find her still there, cleaning up after the dinner party his assistant had organized. She'd made him a plate of food simple, nothing fancy, and left it in the refrigerator with a note. "You barely ate at your own party. This isn't much, but it's better than nothing. S." Such a small kindness, such a basic gesture of care. But no one had done something like that for him since his grandmother died when he was 12. Or maybe it was the morning he'd woken at 3 a.m. from a nightmare rare, but they happened sometimes. Echoes of the violence he'd witnessed and committed, and found her in the kitchen making tea. She'd looked up when he entered, hadn't asked questions, had just poured him a cup and said, "Chamomile. It helps me sleep when my brain won't quiet down." They'd sat in silence for 20 minutes. Then she'd washed both cups, wished him good night, and left. The next morning, she'd acted like nothing had happened. No prying, no judgment, just quiet companionship in the darkest hours. That's when Min-jae had started falling. He'd fought it, of course. Simone worked for him. She deserved better than to be pursued by her employer, better than to be pulled into his dangerous world, better than a man whose hands were stained with blood and whose soul was probably beyond redemption. But fighting gravity didn't make you fall any slower. It just made the landing hurt more. Min-jae took another sip of whiskey, watching his city light up as darkness fell. Somewhere out there, Viktor Petrov was plotting revenge. The Russian didn't handle rejection well, never had. Offering to buy Simone had been a calculated insult, designed to test Min-jae's boundaries and establish dominance. It had backfired spectacularly. Now Viktor knew that Simone was Min-jae's weakness. Knew that threatening her would get a reaction. And men like Viktor exploited weaknesses with ruthless efficiency, which meant Simone was in danger. Real, immediate danger. Min-jae pulled out his phone and dialed. "Sir." His head of security, James Park, answered on the first ring. "I need a full protection detail on Simone Hayes. 24-hour coverage. Best people we have." "Already arranged, sir. 2-person teams rotating every 12 hours. Her apartment building is being monitored. Her commute will be secured. She won't see them unless she looks, but they'll be there." Min-jae nodded, though Park couldn't see it. "Good. Victor's going to make a move. I want to know the moment he starts surveillance on her. What are you planning? Min-jae smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. I'm going to make it very clear what happens when someone threatens what's mine. Is that wise? Starting a war with the Petrov organization over Park stopped himself. Over my housekeeper? Min-jae finished. Say it, Park. You're thinking it. With respect, sir. People are going to ask questions. Simone is an employee, a civilian. Protecting her this aggressively sends a message that she's more than that. Good. Let them wonder. Min-jae's voice was flat, final. And Park? If anyone on our side treats her with anything less than complete respect, you'll inform me immediately. She's not to be gossiped about or speculated on. She's under my protection. That makes her untouchable. Understood, sir. Min-jae ended the call and returned to the window. His reflection stared back at him, 34 years old, successful by any measure, powerful in ways that terrified most people, and completely, utterly, alone. His phone buzzed. Simone's text. Why did you protect me? He stared at the message for a long moment. There were 1,000 ways to answer. Strategic responses that would maintain professional distance. Casual deflections that would make it seem less significant than it was. Min-jae typed the truth instead. Because you're important. And because I wanted to. The moment he hit send, he knew he'd crossed a line. There was no going back now. No more pretending that Simone was just his housekeeper. That she didn't matter beyond her professional capacity. She mattered. She'd mattered for months, maybe years. And now everyone would know it, including Simone herself. The question was, what would she do with that knowledge? The day after. Simone arrived at the penthouse the next morning to find Min-jae in the kitchen making breakfast. This was unusual. He typically left for the office by 7 a.m., and it was barely past 6. More unusual was what he was making. Tteokguk, Korean rice cake soup, the kind his grandmother used to make, he'd once mentioned during one of their rare personal conversations. Good morning, she said carefully, setting her bag down by the door. Min-jae looked up, and something in his expression made her breath catch. He looked softer somehow, less guarded. Morning. I made enough for 2. Will you eat with me? It was a question, not a command. Simone knew she could refuse. Knew she probably should refuse having breakfast with her employer, blurred lines that were already dangerously fuzzy. Okay, she heard herself say instead. They sat at the kitchen island, not the formal dining table, which felt significant somehow. Min-jae served her soup in a traditional earthenware bowl, and the first taste transported her. This is incredible, she said honestly. Where did you learn to cook like this? My grandmother. She raised me until I was 12. Min-jae's expression went distant. She said a man who couldn't feed himself was a man who couldn't survive. So she taught me. What happened when you were 12? She died. Heart attack. I went to live with my father's organization. He said it matter-of-factly, but Simone heard the old pain underneath. They taught me different survival skills. Simone understood what he wasn't saying. The Kang organization was one of the most powerful Korean-American syndicates on the West Coast. Min-jae had inherited control at 25 when his father was killed. 9 years of running an empire built on violence and fear and blood. I'm sorry, she said quietly. About your grandmother. It was a long time ago. Min-jae looked at her directly. But thank you. Not many people ask about her. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Min-jae said, I need to tell you something. Simone's stomach tightened. Okay, Viktor won't let yesterday go. Men like him can't afford to be publicly rejected. It makes them look weak. He's going to retaliate. Against you? Against you. Min-jae's jaw tightened. You're the leverage he thinks he's found, so I've arranged security. You'll have protection everywhere you go until this is resolved. Simone set down her spoon. How long will that take? Days. Maybe weeks. Min-jae leaned forward. I know this is frightening. I know it's not what you signed up for when you took this job. If you want to leave, if you want me to set you up somewhere far away from this mess, I will. New identity, new city, money to start over. No questions asked. The offer was genuine. Simone could see it in his eyes. He would let her go if she asked, would protect her by removing her from his orbit entirely. And part of her wanted to take it. Wanted to run somewhere safe and quiet where powerful men didn't look at her like merchandise and where her employer didn't make her feel things she had no business feeling. But another part, the part that had watched Min-jae stand between her and Viktor, that had seen him risk everything to protect her, that part wanted to stay. What if I don't want to leave? she asked quietly. Min-jae went very still. Then you stay, and I protect you, whatever it takes. Why? Simone asked the question that had been burning in her chest since yesterday. Why does it matter so much? Don't. Min-jae's voice was sharp. Don't say just a housekeeper or just an employee or any other dismissive thing about yourself. You're not just anything, Simone. Then what am I? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Min-jae held her gaze. You're someone who deserves to be protected. Someone who's made my empty penthouse feel like a home. Someone I look forward to seeing every morning. He paused. Someone I care about more than is probably appropriate given our professional relationship. Simone's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear over it. Min-jae, I'm not asking you for anything, he continued. I'm not going to make this weird or uncomfortable. Your job is safe regardless. But I need you to understand why I'm willing to go to war for you. It's not strategy. It's not about sending a message to Viktor. He leaned closer. It's because the thought of anyone hurting you makes me want to burn the entire city down. Simone stared at him, at this powerful, dangerous man who was looking at her like she was precious, like she mattered. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't have to say anything. Min-jae stood, giving her space. Just think about it. Think about whether you want to stay. If you do, I promise I'll keep you safe. And if you don't, I promise I'll let you go. He left her sitting at the kitchen island, her soup going cold, her mind spinning with possibilities she'd never let herself imagine. But even as chaos swirled through her thoughts, one thing crystallized with perfect clarity. She didn't want to run. She wanted to stay and see what happened when a humble housekeeper and a dangerous mafia boss stopped pretending they were just employer and employee. She wanted to see if mine could mean something beautiful instead of terrifying. She wanted Min-jae Kang, and that realization terrified her more than Viktor Petrov ever could. 3 days after the disastrous meeting, Simone discovered exactly how seriously Min-jae took the concept of protection. She'd been walking to her car after her shift, a route she'd taken hundreds of times, when a hand closed around her upper arm and yanked her into the narrow alley between buildings. Her self-defense training kicked in automatically. Simone twisted, drove her elbow back, aimed for the soft tissue of her attacker's solar plexus. But there were 3 of them, and they were professionals. Her elbow connected with body armor. Before she could scream, a cloth pressed over her mouth and nose. Chloroform. Her mind cataloged it even as her vision started to gray. She fought God. She fought, but consciousness was sliding away like water through her fingers. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was a black SUV with tinted windows pulling up to the alley entrance. Then nothing. Simone woke to the smell of expensive cologne and cigar smoke. Her head throbbed. Her mouth tasted like chemicals. And she was tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. Concrete floors, metal walls, the kind of place where screams wouldn't carry. Ah, she wakes. Viktor Petrov's voice came from behind her. Welcome back, Miss Hayes. Simone's heart kicked into overdrive. She tested her bonds, zip ties, tight enough to bite into her wrists but not quite cutting off circulation. Her ankles were similarly secured to the chair legs. Viktor walked around to face her. He looked pleased with himself, like a cat that had caught a particularly interesting mouse. I apologize for the rough treatment. My men lack finesse. But we needed you conscious for this conversation. Conversation, Simone repeated, forcing her voice steady. Is that what you call kidnapping? I call it leverage. Viktor pulled up a chair and sat facing her. You see, your employer was very rude to me, very disrespectful. And in my world, disrespect requires correction. So you kidnapped me to make a point? I kidnapped you to make Min-jae understand that nothing is untouchable. Not his territory, not his pride. Viktor smiled. And certainly not his pretty black housekeeper. Simone's mind raced. She needed to buy time, needed to hope that the security detail Min-jae had mentioned noticed her missing and was already tracking her location. What do you want? She asked. From you? Nothing. You're simply the message. Viktor stood, walking slowly around her chair. I'm going to send Min-jae photographs. You, tied up, terrified. Then I'm going to send him a finger. Not yours, I'm not a complete barbarian. But he'll think it is. He'll panic. He'll come to negotiate. And then? And then I'll kill him. Take his territory. Absorb his organization. And all because he cared too much about the wrong woman. The casual way Viktor discussed murder made Simone's skin crawl. But beneath the fear, anger was building, white-hot and clarifying. You think Min-jae will panic? She heard herself laugh, and it sounded slightly unhinged. You really don't know him at all, do you? Viktor's expression darkened. Careful, girl. Your value to me is as bait. If you become troublesome, that value diminishes. I'm already troublesome, Simone said, channeling every ounce of courage she had. And Min-jae doesn't panic. He plans. He strategizes. And then he destroys his enemies so completely that other people use them as cautionary tales. Brave words from a woman tied to a chair. Not brave, just informed. See, I've worked for Min-jae for 3 years. I've seen the kind of man he is. Patient, ruthless, absolutely thorough. Simone met Viktor's eyes. You took something of his. He's not going to negotiate. He's going to end you. Viktor's hand cracked across her face. The slap snapped her head to the side, made her ears ring. Blood welled in her mouth where her teeth cut the inside of her cheek. Mind your tongue, Viktor hissed, or I'll cut it out before Min-jae arrives. Simone spit blood onto the concrete floor. Do whatever you want. It won't change what's coming. Viktor pulled out his phone, snapped several photos of Simone in the chair. Then he made a call. Send them to Kang, he ordered. All of them. Let him see what happens when he refuses to negotiate. He hung up and smiled at Simone. Now we wait. Min-jae's phone buzzed during a meeting with his financial advisors. He glanced at it, a message from an unknown number. Attached were 6 photographs. The world stopped. Simone, tied to a chair, a fresh bruise blooming on her face, blood at the corner of her mouth, her eyes wide but defiant. The rage that flooded through Min-jae was so intense it felt like being burned alive from the inside out. He stood so abruptly his chair crashed backward. Out, he said quietly. Everyone out. Now. His advisors fled. The door had barely closed before Min-jae had James Park on the phone. Viktor has Simone, he said, his voice deadly calm. Find her. I don't care what resources you have to burn. Find her now. Already on it, sir. Her tracker. Tracker? In her phone. Standard security protocol. We've been monitoring it since she went missing 40 minutes ago. The signal places her in a warehouse district near the docks. I've got teams mobilizing. Tell them I'm coming personally. Sir, that's not... I'm coming, Park. That's not negotiable. Min-jae was already moving, pulling his weapon from the locked drawer in his desk. And I want enough firepower to level the entire block if necessary. Copy that, sir. We'll get her back. I know we will. Min-jae's voice dropped even lower. And then I'm going to kill Viktor Petrov with my bare hands. He ended the call and stared at the photographs again. Someone had hit her, had put their hands on her, had dared to hurt what was his. Min-jae had killed for less, had destroyed entire organizations for smaller insults. But this was different. This was personal in a way that bypassed strategy and went straight to something primal. Viktor had taken Simone, had hurt her, had terrified her. For that, there would be no mercy, no negotiation, no chance at redemption, only blood. The warehouse door exploded inward. Simone's head snapped up as the sound of gunfire echoed through the building. Viktor's men scrambled for positions, drawing weapons, shouting into radios. And then Min-jae walked through the smoke like an avenging angel. He wore all black tactical gear that made him look even more dangerous than usual. His face was absolutely expressionless, but his eyes burned with fury so intense it was almost visible. He held a gun in each hand, and he moved through Viktor's security detail like they were made of paper. Simone watched, stunned, as Min-jae shot 3 men without breaking stride. His movements were fluid, economical. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just devastating efficiency. Kang! Viktor shouted, moving behind Simone's chair and pressing a gun to her temple. Stop or I kill her. Min-jae froze. His eyes found Simone's across the warehouse. She saw him take in the bruise on her face, the blood on her lip, the fear she couldn't quite hide, and she saw something break in his expression. Let her go, Min-jae said, his voice eerily calm. Let her go and I'll consider making your death quick. You're not in a position to negotiate. Viktor pressed the gun harder against Simone's head. Drop your weapons or I paint the walls with her brains. Min-jae didn't move. For 3 heartbeats, he stood perfectly still, weighing options. Then slowly, he lowered his guns and placed them on the ground. Good, Viktor said. Now kick them away. Min-jae complied. Hands behind your head. Again, Min-jae obeyed. Viktor laughed. The mighty Min-jae Kang, brought to his knees by a black maid. Your father must be spinning in his grave. My father, Min-jae said quietly, would understand perfectly. He would have done the same for my mother. Love makes you weak. No. Min-jae's eyes never left Simone's face. Love makes you human. You should try it sometime. I prefer profitable. Viktor released Simone's head and started to move around her chair. Unfortunately for you, this partnership ends now. I'm taking your territory, your organization, and… He didn't finish the sentence. Simone didn't know where Min-jae had hidden the backup weapon, didn't see him draw. One moment Viktor was monologuing, the next there was a gunshot and Viktor was falling, blood blooming from his shoulder. His gun clattered to the floor. Min-jae moved. Faster than should have been possible in tactical gear, he crossed the space between them and kicked Viktor's weapon away. Then he was kneeling beside Simone, pulling a knife from his belt and cutting through the zip ties. Are you hurt? His hands were gentle as they framed her face, tilting it to examine the bruise. Did he? I'm okay, Simone said, though she was shaking. Min-jae, I'm okay. He hit you. I've been hit before. I'm fine. You're not fine. Min-jae's thumb traced the edge of her bruise with devastating gentleness. And he's going to pay for this. He stood, helping Simone to her feet, making sure she was steady before turning to Viktor. The Russian was clutching his bleeding shoulder, his face twisted with pain and fury. You shot me, Viktor gasped. Yes. Min-jae's voice was flat. And I'm going to do much worse if you ever threaten what's mine again. She's a maid. She's everything. Min-jae moved to stand between Simone and Viktor. And you just declared war on me by taking her. So let me be very clear about what happens next. He crouched down, bringing himself to Viktor's level. Simone couldn't see his face, but she heard the absolute coldness in his voice. You're going to leave San Francisco. Tonight, you're going to take your organization back to Moscow, and you're never going to set foot in my city again. If you do, I'll kill you. If you send someone else to hurt her, I'll kill you. If you so much as think about her too hard, I'll know about it, and I'll kill you. You can't. I can and I will. Min-jae stood. I've tolerated you because you were useful. That ends now. You touched what's mine. There are no negotiations after that. Only consequences. James Park appeared in the doorway with a full security team. Sir, we've secured the perimeter. Good. Get Viktor medical attention and then escort him to the airport. Private charter to Moscow. And make sure he understands that this is his only warning. Copy that? Park gestured to his team. They moved to collect Viktor, who was still sputtering protests. Min-jae turned back to Simone. His expression softened immediately, the cold executioner replaced by the man who'd made her breakfast and called her important. Come on, he said gently. Let's go home. Home. The word settled over Simone like a blanket. And as Min-jae wrapped his jacket around her shoulders and guided her out of the warehouse, she realized something profound. Home wasn't a place anymore. Home was standing beside her, dangerous and devoted, and absolutely certain that she was worth protecting. Home was Min-jae Kang, and she was never letting him go. The drive back to the penthouse was silent. Min-jae sat in the back of the armored SUV with Simone, his hand holding hers with gentle insistence, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. He hadn't let go since they'd left the warehouse. Wasn't sure he could. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those photographs. Simone tied up, bruised, bleeding. The thought made his chest constrict with a rage so intense it was physical. He'd killed men for less. Would kill more if they ever threatened her again. Stop it, Simone said quietly. Min-jae looked at her. Stop what? Whatever you're thinking. I can feel you spiraling from here. How did she do that? Read him so accurately when most people couldn't read him at all? I should have protected you better, he said. Should have anticipated Viktor would move this fast. You had security on me. I was grabbed in broad daylight in less than 30 seconds. That's not your fault. It's absolutely my fault. Viktor took you because of me, because I made you a target by claiming you publicly. Simone shifted to face him more fully. Viktor took me because he's a monster who sees women as commodities. That's on him, not you. I could have prevented it. You saved me, Simone said firmly. You came for me. You put down your weapons when he had a gun to my head. You risked your life for mine. I'd do it again, Min-jae said immediately. 1,000 times. Your life is worth more than mine. That's not… Yes, it is. He turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. Simone, I run an organization built on violence. I've done terrible things. Necessary things, maybe, but terrible nonetheless. My hands are covered in blood. I stopped being a good person a long time ago. That's not true. It is. But you, his voice softened. You're good. You're kind. You see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. You deserve better than to be pulled into my world. Better than to be targeted because some powerful man decided you mattered to me. Simone was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What if I don't want better? What if I want you?" Min-jae's breath caught. "Simone, I'm serious. I know what you are, Min-jae. I know what you've done. I've worked for you for 3 years. I'm not naive." She squeezed his hand. "But I also know that you've never been anything but respectful to me. That you pay me fairly and treat me like a person instead of furniture. That you made me breakfast and told me I deserved to take up space in the world. That you put yourself between me and Viktor without hesitation. Anyone would have—" "No," Simone interrupted. "They wouldn't have. Most people would have let me go. Would have decided that one housekeeper wasn't worth the trouble. But you started a war for me. You called me yours in front of your enemies. You came for me." Min-jae stared at her, his heart doing something complicated and painful in his chest. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to stay. Not just as your housekeeper. As whatever this is. Whatever we're becoming. That's dangerous. I don't care. You should care. My world is—" "Your world is the one I'm choosing," Simone said. "I'm choosing you, Min-jae, if you'll have me." The SUV pulled up to the Blackstone Tower. Min-jae could see his security team already positioning themselves around the entrance. Could see the reporters who'd somehow caught wind of the incident and were waiting for a statement. He ignored all of it, focused only on the woman beside him whose hand was still in his, who was looking at him like he was worth choosing. "If I have you?" he repeated quietly. "Simone, I've been yours since the day you made me tea at 3 a.m. and didn't ask questions. Maybe before that. Maybe from the moment you first walked into my penthouse and looked me in the eye instead of at the floor." Simone's expression softened. "Then take me inside. Keep me safe. And let me keep you safe too. You want to protect me? Someone has to. You're terrible at protecting yourself." She smiled, and despite everything that had happened, it was genuine. "Besides, I know where you keep all the good snacks. That's valuable intelligence." Min-jae laughed, actually laughed, the sound surprising him. When was the last time someone had made him laugh? When had his penthouse felt like anything other than a beautiful cage? "Come on," he said, helping her out of the SUV. "Let's go home." Inside the penthouse, Min-jae's carefully maintained control finally cracked. The moment the door closed behind them, cutting off the outside world, he pulled Simone into his arms and just held her. Not sexually, not possessively, just desperately, like she was the only thing tethering him to reality. "I thought I'd lost you," he whispered against her hair. "When I saw those photographs, when I realized Viktor had you, I thought, I know." Simone's arms wrapped around him, returning the embrace with equal intensity. "I was scared too. But you came for me. Always." Min-jae pulled back just enough to cup her face, his thumbs gentle on her skin. "I will always come for you, no matter what, no matter where. You're mine to protect, Simone. And I take that responsibility seriously." "Mine," Simone repeated. "You keep saying that word, because it's true. You're mine. I'm yours. This thing between us, it's real. And I'm done pretending it's not." He kissed her then, finally, after months of wanting to. It was gentle at first, tentative, asking permission, but when Simone's hands fisted in his shirt and pulled him closer, when her lips parted beneath his, gentleness transformed into something more urgent. Min-jae kissed her like he was drowning and she was air, like she was the answer to every question he'd been asking for years. His hands slid into her braids, tilting her head to deepen the kiss, and Simone made a sound half gasp, half moan that shot straight through him. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Min-jae rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me," he said quietly. "Not in the guest room, not as my housekeeper. Stay with me as my partner, my equal, the woman I'm completely in love with." Simone's eyes went wide. "You love me?" "Yes. No hesitation. No doubt. I love you, Simone Hayes. I love your strength and your kindness, and the way you make this sterile penthouse feel like home. I love that you're not afraid of me, that you see who I am and choose me anyway." Tears welled in Simone's eyes. "I love you too. I didn't want to, tried not to, but I do. I love you, Min-jae." He kissed her again. Softer this time. Reverent. Then he scooped her up in his arms, making her squeal in surprise, and carried her toward the master bedroom. "What are you doing?" she asked, laughing. "Taking you to bed," he said matter-of-factly. "You've had a traumatic day. You need rest." "Just rest?" Min-jae paused, meeting her eyes. "What do you want, Simone? Tell me and it's yours." She reached up, cupping his face with both hands. "I want you. All of you. The dangerous Mafia boss, and the man who makes me breakfast. The cold strategist, and the person who holds me like I'm precious. I want everything." "You have it," Min-jae promised. "You have all of me. Forever." He carried her into the bedroom, his bedroom, which would now be their bedroom, and laid her gently on the bed. Then he joined her, pulling her close. And for the first time in years, Min-jae felt something he'd thought he'd lost forever. He felt at peace. They didn't make love that night. Simone fell asleep within minutes, exhausted by the day's trauma, and Min-jae simply held her, watched her sleep, marveled at how someone so good had chosen to stay with someone like him. He was still awake hours later when his phone buzzed. James Park. Min-jae carefully extracted himself from Simone's embrace and stepped into the hallway to take the call. "Victor's gone," Park said. "Private charter just left for Moscow. Our people confirmed he's on board." "Good, but I want surveillance maintained. If he so much as thinks about coming back, we'll know." "Already arranged." Park paused. "Sir, there's something else. We found out how Victor's people grabbed Simone so quickly." "Tell me." One of her neighbors has been feeding information to the Petrov organization for weeks. Her schedule, her routines, when she left for work. Victor knew exactly when and where to take her. Rage, cold and terrible, flooded through Min-jae. Name? Marcus Chen. Lives 2 doors down from Miss Hayes. He's got gambling debts to one of Victor's loan operations. They use that as leverage. Where is he now? His apartment. We've been monitoring. Min-jae's jaw tightened. Have him brought to the warehouse. The one on Pier 42. I'll deal with him personally. Sir, respectfully, maybe you should let the team handle this. You've been through enough tonight. Park. That man betrayed Simone's trust. Fed information that got her kidnapped and assaulted. I'm handling this personally. Understood. We'll have him there within the hour. Min-jae ended the call and returned to the bedroom. Simone was still sleeping, her face peaceful in the dim light. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe, reminding himself that she was safe. Then he leaned down, pressed a kiss to her forehead, and left a note on the nightstand. Had to handle some business. I'll be back before you wake. You're safe here. I love you. M. He dressed quickly in dark clothes, collected his weapons, and left the penthouse. By the time he reached the warehouse on Pier 42, Marcus Chen was already there, bound to a chair, looking terrified. "Mr. Kang," Marcus stammered, "I can explain." "Explain how you sold out your neighbor for money?" Min-jae's voice was deadly quiet. "Explain how your debts were more important than her safety?" "They were going to kill me. Victor's people, they said if I didn't help them, they'd... So you sacrificed Simone instead." "I didn't know they'd hurt her. I thought they just wanted information about you." Min-jae pulled out his gun. The click as he chambered a round echoed through the warehouse. Marcus went white. Please, I'll do anything. I'll leave the city. I'll never." "You're right," Min-jae said. "You'll never do anything again." He raised the weapon. And then Simone's voice cut through the darkness. "Don't." Min-jae froze, turned. Simone stood in the warehouse entrance, wrapped in his jacket, her hair loose around her shoulders. She must have followed him. "Simone." "Don't kill him," she said, walking toward them. Her voice was steady, but Min-jae could see the effort it took. "Not for me. He betrayed you. I know, and that's awful. But killing him won't change what happened. It'll just add more blood to your hands." She reached him, placed her hand over his on the gun. "I don't want that for you. For us. He deserves to pay. Then let him pay by living with what he did. By knowing that his cowardice got someone hurt." Simone turned to Marcus. "You're going to leave San Francisco. Tonight. And you're never coming back. If you do, if I ever see you again, I won't stop Min-jae next time. Understand?" Marcus nodded frantically. Yes. Thank you. Simone turned back to Min-jae. "Let's go home." Min-jae looked between her and Marcus. Every instinct screamed to finish this. To eliminate the threat. To make sure Marcus could never endanger Simone again. But she was asking him not to. Was offering him a different path. One that didn't end in blood. Slowly, he lowered the gun. "Get him out of my sight," he told Park. "Put him on the first bus out of the city. If he's still here by dawn, you have my permission to handle it however you see fit." "Copy that." Min-jae took Simone's hand and led her out of the warehouse. They walked to his car in silence. Once inside, he turned to her. "You followed me. You left a note. I'm not an idiot. I know what handling business means in your world. I was going to kill him." "I know." Simone buckled her seatbelt. "That's why I came. You think I'm a monster. I think you're a man who protects what he loves with everything he has. But I also think you're capable of mercy." She reached over, took his hand. "And I don't want you to become the kind of man who kills for revenge. That's not who you are with me." Min-jae stared at their joined hands. "Who am I with you?" "You're someone better. Someone who can choose a different path." Simone smiled. "You're the man who makes me breakfast and holds me when I'm scared and looks at me like I'm precious. That's the man I fell in love with. That's the man I want you to be." Something in Min-jae's chest cracked open. All the hardness he'd cultivated over years of violence, all the coldness he'd worn like armor, Simone was dismantling it piece by piece, making him soft, making him human, making him better. "I love you," he said, the words feeling like a revelation. "I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good." Simone leaned over and kissed him softly. "Fear means you have something to lose, and what we have is worth protecting." Min-jae drove them home through the quiet city streets. And for the first time since his grandmother died, he felt like he was exactly where he belonged. Not running an empire, not orchestrating violence, just sitting beside the woman he loved. Heading home to a future they'd build together. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 2 weeks later. The past 2 weeks had been a revelation for both of them. Simone had officially moved into the penthouse, not as Min-jae's housekeeper but as his partner. They'd navigated the transition with surprising ease. Morning coffee together, evenings cooking side by side in the kitchen, nights tangled in each other's arms, learning the geography of bodies and hearts. Min-jae had been true to his word. He'd increased her security, yes, but he'd also introduced her to his organization. Not as the girlfriend or the woman I'm seeing, but as his equal, his partner in the truest sense. Simone had been terrified at first. These were dangerous men and women who'd built their lives on violence and loyalty to Min-jae. Why would they respect her? But they did. Because Min-jae made it clear that disrespecting her was disrespecting him, because she proved herself capable and intelligent. And because, slowly, they began to see what Min-jae had seen from the start. Simone Hayes wasn't just beautiful. She was brilliant, strategic, the kind of person who could solve complex problems with elegant simplicity. She'd started helping with the legitimate side of Min-jae's business empire, the real estate holdings, the investment portfolios, the shell companies that needed proper management. Her background in accounting, something she'd mentioned casually and Min-jae had immediately leveraged, made her invaluable. Within a week, she'd found $3 million in inefficiencies. Within 2, she'd restructured their holdings to minimize tax exposure while maximizing profit. Min-jae watched her present to his financial team with pride and something deeper. Love, yes, but also respect, admiration. The recognition that she was exactly what his organization needed, someone ethical enough to keep them honest, smart enough to keep them profitable. They were having breakfast Simone's turn to cook, and she'd made Southern-style grits and eggs that Min-jae was becoming addicted to when James Park called. "Sir," Park's voice was tight. "We have a problem." Min-jae put the phone on speaker so Simone could hear. "What kind of problem?" "Viktor. He's back in San Francisco." The announcement hit like a physical blow. Simone's hand froze halfway to her coffee mug. Min-jae's expression went absolutely cold. "When?" he asked quietly. "Landed 4 hours ago. Private charter. Brought 20 men with him. Maybe more. Heavy weapons. Our sources say he's calling in favors from every organization that owes him." "Why?" Simone asked. Min-jae let him live, gave him a chance to walk away. "With respect, Miss Hayes. Men like Viktor don't walk away. They regroup and retaliate." Park's voice held grim certainty. "He's here for revenge, and he's not coming alone." Min-jae's mind was already working, calculating possibilities, identifying threats. "Location? We lost him in the financial district. But sir, there's more. He made contact with several of your rival organizations. The Chin family, the Russians from Oakland, even some of the Irish crews. He's building a coalition." Against me. Against both of you, sir. His message is that you've gone soft, that you chose a woman over business, that you're weak now and vulnerable. Simone felt ice flood her veins. This was her fault. Viktor was back because of her, because Min-jae had chosen to protect her instead of killing him when he had the chance. How many? Min-jae asked, his voice deadly calm. Counting Viktor's people and potential allies? Maybe 60, 70 combatants. They're organized, well-armed, and motivated. And our numbers? 45 loyal to you absolutely. Another 20 we can call in within the hour. But sir, even with equal numbers, this is going to be bloody. Min-jae was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Understood. Call everyone in. Full mobilization. I want the penthouse locked down like a fortress. Triple security on all approaches. And Park? Yes, sir. I want Simone protected. That's priority 1. Everything else is secondary. Already arranged. I'll have a dedicated team here within 10 minutes. Min-jae ended the call and turned to Simone. She was staring at her plate, her appetite gone. This is my fault, she said quietly. No. Min-jae's voice was sharp. This is Viktor being exactly what he is, a monster who can't accept defeat. None of this is your fault, Simone. You should have killed him, when you had the chance. Maybe, but you asked me not to, and I don't regret that choice. He reached across the table, taking her hand. I don't regret choosing mercy because you asked me to. I don't regret anything that brought us here. But now people are going to die. Your people. Because Viktor wants revenge for you, protecting me. People die in my world, regardless. Min-jae said bluntly. That's the nature of what I do. But I'd rather they die fighting for something that matters than fighting over territory or pride or money. I'm not worth... You're worth everything. Min-jae stood, moving around the table to pull Simone to her feet. His hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. Viktor was always going to come back. Men like him always do. If it wasn't about you, it would have been about territory or respect or some other excuse. This isn't your fault. It feels like it is. I know, but it's not. He kissed her forehead. What is your responsibility? What is our responsibility is figuring out how to end this. Permanently. Simone looked up at him. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Viktor wants a war. But wars can be won with strategy as much as violence. Min-jae's expression shifted, becoming the cold strategist she'd seen glimpses of. He's expecting me to dig in, to protect you by hiding you away while he picks off my people. But what if we gave him what he wants? What does he want? Me. You. Both of us vulnerable and exposed. Min-jae smiled, and it was sharp enough to cut. So we give him exactly that. We make him think he's won, and then we destroy him. That's incredibly dangerous. Yes. But it's also our best chance at ending this without massive casualties on our side. He pulled out his phone, already texting Park with instructions. I'm going to set a trap, but I need you to trust me. I do trust you, but I'm not going to sit in a safe room while you risk your life. Min-jae looked at her. Simone. No. We're partners, remember? Equals. That means if you're putting yourself in danger, I am too. You're not trained for this, not equipped for... Then train me. Equip me. But don't ask me to hide while the man I love walks into a trap. Simone's voice was firm. I won't do it. I can't. Min-jae stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Okay. But you follow my lead. You don't take unnecessary risks. And if I tell you to run, you run. Deal? Deal. Good. He pulled her into a tight embrace. I love you. And I'm going to keep you safe. But I'm also going to let you fight beside me. Because you're right, we're partners. And partners don't abandon each other when things get difficult. Simone held him just as tightly. Outside the windows, San Francisco gleamed in the morning light. Somewhere in that city, Viktor Petrov was planning their destruction. But he didn't understand what he was up against. He thought he was fighting a mafia boss and his housekeeper. He had no idea he was fighting a king and queen who'd defend their kingdom with everything they had. And that miscalculation would be his last. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Min-jae leaked information through channels he knew Viktor was monitoring. A meeting at a neutral location, an upscale restaurant Min-jae frequented, public enough that Viktor would think Min-jae felt safe, private enough that an ambush was possible. The message. Min-jae wanted to negotiate, wanted to avoid bloodshed, was willing to give Viktor territory in exchange for peace. It was exactly the kind of weakness Viktor would believe, The kind of soft decision a man supposedly compromised by love would make. Viktor took the bait. "He's mobilizing," Park reported. 20 men, heavy weapons. They're going to hit the restaurant during your supposed meeting. Perfect. Min-jae was checking his weapons, 2 handguns, a knife, and the kind of cold focus that preceded violence. And our people? Positioned. 50 men in total, covering every exit. The moment Viktor makes his move, we close the trap. Simone watched from across the room, her own weapon, a compact Glock that Min-jae had taught her to use over the past 2 weeks, holstered at her hip. She was wearing Kevlar under her dress. Min-jae had insisted. "You remember the plan?" he asked her. "I stay in the private dining room until the shooting starts. Then I take the service exit to the secondary extraction point where Park's team will be waiting. And if something goes wrong, I run. I don't try to be a hero." Simone crossed to him. "But Min-jae, if you're in trouble, you still run. That's non-negotiable." His hands were gentle despite the harsh words. "I need to know you're safe. That's the only way I can focus on ending Viktor. I need to know you're safe too. I will be, I promise." He kissed her softly. "This ends tonight. One way or another, Viktor won't threaten us again." The restaurant was one of San Francisco's finest white tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where power brokers made deals over aged wine and perfectly prepared steak. Tonight, it would become a battlefield. Min-jae sat in the private dining room with Simone across from him, playing the part of a couple on a date. To anyone watching, they looked relaxed, in love, vulnerable. It was all theater. At 8:47 p.m., Park's voice came through the hidden earpiece. "Viktor's teams are in position. Front entrance, kitchen entrance, and the alley. They're carrying enough firepower to level the building." "Copy," Min-jae murmured, the word lost in the ambient noise. He looked at Simone. "It's time." She nodded, standing smoothly. To anyone watching, she was just excusing herself to use the restroom. In reality, she was heading for the service exit and the extraction team. Min-jae watched her go, his heart tight. Then he turned his attention to the door and waited. Viktor entered at 8:52 p.m. exactly. He came through the front, surrounded by 6 bodyguards, all armed. The other diners scattered immediately. They recognized danger when they saw it. "Kang," Viktor said, his voice carrying across the suddenly empty restaurant. "How good of you to accept my invitation." "Your invitation?" Min-jae remained seated, utterly calm. "I believe I invited you." "Details." Viktor waved dismissively. He looked around the dining room. "Where is your lovely Simone? I was hoping for a reunion. Somewhere safe. Far from you. Pity. I wanted her to watch when I put a bullet in your head." Viktor's smile was cruel. "Any last words?" "Yes." Min-jae stood slowly. "You made 2 mistakes tonight, Viktor. The first was coming back to my city. And the second, thinking I was stupid enough to actually negotiate with a dead man." Viktor's expression shifted. "What?" The windows exploded inward. Min-jae's security team came through every entrance simultaneously. Front, back, kitchen, service exits. 50 men moving with military precision, weapons drawn, cutting off every escape route. Viktor's men tried to fight, tried to reach their weapons, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Within 90 seconds, it was over. Viktor's bodyguards were dead or disarmed, and Viktor himself was on his knees with 3 guns pointed at his head. Min-jae walked slowly toward him. In his hand was the knife he'd taken from his grandmother's kitchen the day she died. He'd carried it for 22 years, had never used it, until now. "I gave you a chance," Min-jae said quietly, crouching to Viktor's level. "I let you live, sent you home with a warning, and you came back anyway. Threatened the woman I love, tried to destroy everything I've built. You should have killed me when you had the chance." Viktor spat. "You're right, I should have. But I was trying to be better. Trying to be the kind of man Simone could love without reservation." Min-jae's smile was cold. "The thing is, Viktor, she loves me anyway, darkness and all. Which means I don't have to hold back anymore. You're going to kill me here? In public? No. I'm going to make you disappear, completely, like you never existed." Min-jae gestured to Park. "Take him to the facility. Make sure he understands exactly what happens to people who threaten my family." Viktor's eyes widened. "Family? Simone is my family now, and I protect my family absolutely." Park's team hauled Viktor away. The man was screaming threats, making promises, begging. Min-jae ignored all of it. He had one priority, getting to Simone. She was waiting at the extraction point, exactly where she was supposed to be, with Park's secondary team surrounding her. When she saw Min-jae approaching, alive and whole, relief flooded her face. "It's done?" she asked. "It's done. Viktor's finished. And the organizations that allied with him are already backing down. By morning, the word will be out. Anyone who threatens you answers to me. And I don't negotiate with people who hurt my family." Simone launched herself into his arms. Min-jae caught her, holding tight, breathing her in. "I was so scared," she admitted against his chest. "So was I. But it's over now. Really over." "What happens to Viktor?" Min-jae's expression hardened. "He disappears. Completely. No trial. No negotiation. Just gone." Simone pulled back to look at him. She should have been horrified, should have been disgusted by the casual way he discussed making someone vanish. Instead, she just nodded. "Okay. Okay? He tried to kill you. Tried to destroy us. I'm not going to mourn him." She cupped Min-jae's face. "I know what you are. Know what your world requires. And I'm choosing you anyway." Min-jae kissed her. Deep and thorough and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Come on," he said. "Let's go home." Home. Their home. The penthouse that had transformed from a sterile showpiece into a real home because Simone lived there. As they drove through the city, Park driving, security detail surrounding them, Min-jae held Simone's hand and made silent promises. He would protect her. Always. He would love her. Forever. And he would burn down anyone who ever threatened her again. Because Simone Hayes wasn't just his housekeeper. She wasn't just the woman he loved. She was his partner, his equal, his everything. And Min-jae Kang protected what was his. Always. The warehouse on Pier 42 had seen its share of violence. Tonight would be its last. Viktor Petrov was bound to a chair in the center of the space, the same chair where he'd photographed Simone 2 weeks ago. The symmetry wasn't lost on Min-jae. "You're going to kill me," Viktor said. He'd stopped struggling, had accepted his fate with the resignation of a man who'd always known violence would claim him eventually. "Yes," Min-jae said simply. "The black woman. She made you soft." "No, she made me human. There's a difference." Viktor laughed, the sound bitter. "You think love is strength? It's the opposite. It's a weakness waiting to be exploited." "You tried to exploit it," Min-jae pointed out. "And look where that got you." Silence. Then Viktor said, "She's watching, isn't she? You brought her to see this." Min-jae turned. Simone stood in the doorway, wrapped in his jacket, her expression unreadable. "I asked to come," she said, walking into the warehouse. "I needed to see this end." "To watch me kill a man in cold blood?" Min-jae asked gently. "Simone, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." She stopped beside him. "Viktor kidnapped me, hurt me, tried to kill the man I love. I'm not going to pretend I'm sorry he's paying for that." Viktor studied her. "You're stronger than you look." "Yes, I am." Simone met his gaze steadily. "And you underestimated that. Underestimated me. That was your mistake. One of many, apparently." Viktor turned to Min-jae. "Do it then. Make it quick at least." Min-jae pulled out his weapon. But before he could act, Simone's hand on his arm stopped him. "Wait," she said quietly. Min-jae lowered the gun. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. I just..." Simone took a breath. "I need to say something first." She turned to Viktor. "You looked at me and saw a commodity. Saw someone weak and vulnerable and exploitable. But you were wrong. I survived things that would have broken you. I built a life from nothing. And I found someone who sees my worth instead of my usefulness." "Touching," Viktor sneered. "No. True. And that's what you'll never understand. That real strength isn't domination or fear or violence. Real strength is choosing love, even when it's dangerous. Choosing mercy, even when revenge would be easier. Choosing to be better than the worst things that happened to you." Simone stepped closer to Viktor. "You're going to die tonight. And tomorrow, no one will remember you existed. But I'm going to live. I'm going to be happy. And that's the real victory, not that you died, but that I survived you." She stepped back, nodding to Min-jae. "Okay, I'm ready now." Min-jae raised the weapon again. This time, there was no hesitation. No dramatic speech. Just efficiency. One shot. Clean. Final. Viktor Petrov slumped in the chair. and the monster who'd terrorized them both was gone. Min-jae lowered his gun and turned to Simone. She was pale but steady, not crying, not breaking down, just witnessing the end of a threat with calm acceptance. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "Yes, I am." She took his hand. "Can we go now?" "Yes." "Park's team will handle the cleanup." They walked out of the warehouse together. Behind them, Park was already making phone calls, organizing the disposal, ensuring that Viktor Petrov would vanish without a trace. In the car, Simone finally spoke. "I should feel something. Guilt or horror or something." "Do you?" "No. I just feel relieved." "Is that wrong?" "No." Min-jae pulled her close. "You survived him. You're allowed to be relieved that he can't hurt you anymore. Will there be others? Other Victors who think they can use me against you? Probably. But they'll learn the same lesson Viktor did." His voice was hard. "I protect what's mine, always. And anyone stupid enough to test that won't survive the lesson." Simone was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I don't want this to be our life, constantly fighting off threats, always looking over our shoulders. It won't be. Viktor was an aberration. Most people in my world now understand that you're untouchable." Tonight made that crystal clear. How? Because word spreads fast. By morning, every organization on the West Coast will know what happened to Viktor Petrov when he threatened you. They'll know I'm willing to go to war to protect you, and they'll adjust their behavior accordingly. Min-jae turned her face to his. "You're safe, Simone. Really safe. Not because I've locked you away or hidden you, but because I've made it clear that hurting you means death. Absolute. Final. No negotiation." Simone searched his eyes. "You'd really burn it all down for me? Your empire? Your reputation? Everything?" "Without hesitation. You're more important than any of it." "I love you," Simone whispered. "I love you too. More than I thought I could love anyone." They drove through the city to the penthouse, to their home, to the life they were building together. And as San Francisco's lights blurred past the windows, Min-jae made one final silent promise. No one would threaten Simone again. He'd make sure of it, even if it meant painting the streets with blood, because she was his partner, his love, his everything, and Min-jae Kang protected what was his. Always. 3 months later, the penthouse had transformed. What had once been a sterile showcase of wealth was now a home. Simone's books lined new shelves. Her art hung on walls that had featured only expensive abstracts. Her music played through speakers that had been silent for years. Min-jae stood in the kitchen watching her cook traditional Korean dishes she'd been learning from recipes his grandmother left behind. She'd asked about his family, about his childhood, about the woman who'd raised him. And Min-jae, who never talked about such things, had told her everything. She'd listened, asked questions, and then she'd asked if he'd teach her to make the foods his grandmother made. Now, 3 months later, Simone could make tteokguk almost as well as he could season dishes with exactly the right balance, could navigate Korean ingredients with increasing confidence. It moved him in ways he couldn't articulate. This woman, this brilliant, beautiful, strong woman, was learning his culture. Not because she had to, not because it would benefit her, but because it mattered to him, and therefore it mattered to her. "Stop staring and taste this," Simone said without turning around. "I think I finally got the kimchi right, but I need your honest opinion." Min-jae crossed to her, accepting the spoon she offered. The kimchi was perfect, the right amount of spice, the right fermentation level, the right balance of flavors. "It's perfect," he said honestly. "My grandmother would have approved." Simone's face lit up. "Really? Really?" He pulled her close, kissing her softly. "You're incredible. You know that? You might have mentioned it once or twice." She smiled against his lips. "Now go set the table. We have guests coming." Right. James Park and his wife were joining them for dinner. It was a small thing having friends over, sharing a meal, but it represented something profound. Min-jae's world was opening up, becoming less isolated, less lonely. Because of Simone, the dinner was relaxed, easy. Park's wife, Jennifer, was a surgeon at UCSF, and she and Simone hit it off immediately, bonding over their shared experiences as Black women navigating predominantly white, male-dominated professional spaces. Min-jae watched Simone laugh, watched her sparkle, watched her command the room with effortless grace, and he felt something settle in his chest. Certainty, rightness. The bone-deep knowledge that this was exactly where he was supposed to be. After Park and Jennifer left, after the dishes were done, Min-jae found Simone on the balcony overlooking the city. She was wrapped in a blanket, staring out at the lights, looking contemplative. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sliding an arm around her waist. "How different my life is now. 3 months ago, I was your housekeeper. Now I'm—" She paused. "What am I exactly? Partner doesn't feel like enough. Girlfriend sounds too casual. You're the woman I'm going to marry," Min-jae said simply. "If you'll have me." Simone turned to face him, eyes wide. "What?" Min-jae pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring platinum band with a single diamond, elegant and understated, perfect for her. "Simone Hayes," he said quietly. "I know this is fast. I know we've only been together 3 months. But I've loved you longer than that. Loved you before I knew what to call it, and I don't want to wait anymore." He opened the box fully. "Marry me. Be my wife. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that you made the right choice when you chose to stay." Simone stared at the ring, tears welling in her eyes. "Min-jae, I know my world is dangerous. I know loving me comes with risks, but I promise I will protect you with everything I have. I promise I will love you with everything I am. I promise that you will never again have to make yourself small or invisible or less than. With me, you get to take up space. You get to be brilliant and strong and absolutely yourself. And I will stand beside you, proud to be yours." Simone was crying now, but she was also smiling. "You really mean all that?" "Every word. I would move heaven and earth for you, Simone. Would burn down the world and rebuild it exactly to your specifications. Would do anything, become anything, sacrifice anything if it meant keeping you safe and happy." "You already do that," Simone said softly. "Every day, in 1,000 small ways. Then do me the honor of making it official. Marry me." Simone looked at the ring, looked at Min-jae, looked out at the city they'd defended together. Then she nodded. Yes, I'll marry you." Min-jae slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, because of course it did. He'd stolen her ring size weeks ago, had been carrying this ring for a month, waiting for the right moment. This was the right moment. He kissed her deeply, pouring everything he felt into it. When they broke apart, both were smiling. "I love you," Simone said. "I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good. Fear means you have something to lose, and what we have is worth being afraid for." Min-jae echoed her words from months ago, making her laugh. "When?" she asked. "When what? When do you want to get married?" Min-jae considered. "Tomorrow, next week, 6 months from now. Whenever you want. I'm yours, regardless of paperwork." "Next month," Simone decided. "Small ceremony. Just the people who matter. Your organization, my friends. Nothing fancy. Just us promising to love each other in front of the people we care about. Perfect." Min-jae pulled her close. Absolutely perfect. They stood on the balcony as the city lights blazed below them. 2 people who'd found each other against impossible odds. A mafia boss and a housekeeper. A man haunted by violence, and a woman who'd survived despite the odds. Together, they were something more. Together, they were home. 4 weeks later. The wedding was everything Simone had asked for. Small, intimate, perfect. They married in Min-jae's penthouse, overlooking the bay, with 30 people who genuinely cared about them bearing witness. Park was Min-jae's best man. Jennifer was Simone's maid of honor. Simone wore white, a simple dress that hugged her curves and made Min-jae forget how to breathe. Min-jae wore traditional Korean attire hanbok that his grandmother had made for his father's wedding, altered to fit him. When they saw each other, both stopped. Just stopped and stared. "You're beautiful," Min-jae said, his voice rough with emotion. "So are you," Simone replied, tears already starting. The ceremony was brief, traditional vows with personal additions. When it came time for Min-jae to speak, he said, "Simone, you walked into my life 3 years ago and changed everything. You made me want to be better, made me believe I could be better. You saw past the violence and the coldness and found someone worth loving, and I promise to spend every day of our lives proving that you were right, that I am worth loving, because you make me worth it." Simone's vows were equally moving. "Min-jae, you protected me when I needed it most. You gave me space to be strong when I was ready. You never made me feel small or invisible or less than. You made me feel precious, and I promise to stand beside you through whatever comes. To be your partner, your equal, your home. Because that's what you are to me, home. And I'm never leaving." When the officiant pronounced them married, when Min-jae kissed his wife for the first time, the small crowd erupted in applause. And in that moment, surrounded by people who loved them, Min-jae Kang and Simone Hayes became Min-jae and Simone Kang. A family, a partnership, a love story that had started with danger and protection and mine, but had become so much more. The reception was joyful, music and dancing and laughter. Min-jae danced with his wife, their first dance as a married couple to a song she'd chosen, something about finding home in another person. "I can't believe you're mine," Min-jae whispered against her hair. "I can't believe you're mine," Simone replied. The powerful Min-jae Kang, married to his former housekeeper. The gossip sites are having a field day. "Let them talk. You're the best decision I've ever made." Later, when the guests had left and they were alone in the penthouse, their home, Min-jae carried Simone across the threshold of their bedroom. "Tradition," he explained when she laughed. "You're full of surprises. Wait until you see what else I have planned." That night, they made love as husband and wife. It was tender and intense and absolutely perfect. Min-jae worshipped her body with hands and mouth. Simone gave as good as she got, exploring every inch of him, learning what made him gasp and groan. When they finally came together, it felt like coming home. Like two pieces of a puzzle finally clicking into place. Like everything they'd survived had been leading to this moment, skin against skin, hearts beating in sync, souls entwined. Afterward, Simone lay with her head on Min-jae's chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling utterly at peace. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too," Min-jae replied, his hands gentle in her hair. "My wife, my partner, my everything." "What happens now?" Simone asked. "After the fairy tale wedding? What's our real life going to look like?" Min-jae considered. "Probably messy. My world is still dangerous. There will still be threats, still be challenges. But we'll face them together. You'll keep making my business more profitable and more legitimate. I'll keep protecting you and everyone you care about. We'll build something that matters, not just an empire, but a legacy." "What kind of legacy?" "The kind that proves love isn't weakness. That choosing to be better is always possible. That a mafia boss and a housekeeper can become partners who change their entire world." Simone smiled against his skin. "I like that legacy. Good. Because you're stuck with me now, for better or worse. In sickness and health, till death do us part. Those are the vows we just made. And I meant every word." Min-jae tilted her face up to kiss her softly. "You're mine, Simone Kang, and I'm yours, forever." "Forever," Simone agreed. And as they drifted to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, both knew one truth absolutely. They'd found something rare, something precious, something worth fighting for. They'd found each other. And nothing, not Viktor, not danger, not the entire criminal underworld would ever tear them apart. Because Min-jae Kang protected what was his. And Simone Kang was his heart, his soul, his everything. She was not for sale. She was his. And he was hers. Forever. 6 months later, the knock on Min-jae's office door was tentative. He looked up from the contracts he was reviewing to find Simone standing in the doorway, a strange expression on her face. "What's wrong?" he asked immediately, standing. "Nothing's wrong. She walked into the office, closing the door behind her. "I have news." Min-jae's heart kicked. "What kind of news?" Simone pulled out a small stick from behind her back. It took Min-jae a moment to process what he was seeing. A pregnancy test, with 2 very clear pink lines. His voice caught. We're having a baby," Simone confirmed, tears streaming down her face. "I know we didn't plan this. I know it's probably not ideal timing with everything happening with the organization, but..." Min-jae crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "It's perfect. You're perfect. This is perfect." "Really?" Simone looked up at him, hopeful and terrified. "You're not upset?" "Upset? Simone, this is the best news I've ever received." He cupped her face, thumbs wiping away her tears. "We're having a baby, a family. Something I never thought I'd have, never thought I deserved." "You deserve everything," Simone said fiercely. "You deserve happiness and love, and a family that adores you." "I have that." Min-jae kissed her softly. "I have you. And now we're adding to our family, building something beautiful from all the darkness." That night, they celebrated quietly. Min-jae made Simone's favorite meal. They talked about names and nurseries, and how their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't even imagine. Boy or girl? Simone asked as they lay in bed later. I don't care. As long as they're healthy. As long as you're healthy. I want a girl, Simone admitted. A daughter who looks like both of us. Who's strong and smart and knows her worth. We'll raise her to be extraordinary, Min-jae promised. Teach her she can be anything. Do anything. That she's precious and powerful and perfect exactly as she is. And if we have a boy? Same thing. We'll raise him to respect women. To value kindness along with strength. To understand that power comes with responsibility. Min-jae's hand settled over Simone's still flat stomach. We'll raise them right, Simone. Give them everything we didn't have. Love, Simone said softly. We'll give them love. So much love they'll never doubt they're wanted. 7 months later, Simone gave birth to a daughter. Min-jae Kang came into the world at 3:47 a.m., screaming with a fury that made her father laugh and her mother cry. She had Simone's dark skin and Min-jae's eyes. She had a full head of black hair and tiny fists that gripped her parents' fingers with surprising strength. She was perfect. Min-jae held his daughter for the first time and felt something crack open in his chest. This tiny human, this perfect combination of him and Simone, this living proof that love could create beauty. She's so small, he whispered, terrified he'd break her. She's strong, Simone corrected, exhausted but radiant. Look at her, already fighting. She gets that from you. She gets it from both of us. Simone reached out, touching their daughter's tiny hand. We made this, Min-jae. We made her. Min-jae sat carefully on the edge of the hospital bed, cradling Min-seo against his chest. I promise, he said quietly to his daughter. I promise to protect you, to love you, to give you a life where you never have to be afraid, where you're free to be exactly who you are. We both promise that, Simone added, her hand on Min-jae's back, and they meant it. Over the next months, as Min-seo grew from newborn to infant to toddler, Min-jae and Simone kept that promise. They built a life around their daughter, made sure she knew she was loved unconditionally, made sure she saw healthy love modeled every day. Min-jae had stepped back from the more violent aspects of his organization. He still ran his empire, but he delegated the dangerous work, focused instead on the legitimate businesses. On building something his daughter could inherit without shame. Simone continued to manage the financial side. She'd proven invaluable, had tripled their legal income in 2 years, had positioned them to transition fully legitimate within 5. They were becoming respectable. A power couple who'd clawed their way up from impossible odds. A family that proved love could transform anything. On Min-seo's first birthday, they hosted a party. Family and friends filled the penthouse. The little girl was passed from person to person, adored by everyone, safe in a way her parents had never been at her age. That night, after the guests left and Min-seo was asleep in her crib, Min-jae and Simone sat on their balcony overlooking the city. Do you ever think about how we got here? Simone asked. How we went from housekeeper and employer to this? Every day, Min-jae admitted. I think about Viktor offering to buy you, about calling you mine for the first time, about choosing to protect you even when it was strategically unsound. Best unsound decision you ever made? Best decision, period. He pulled her close. You saved me, Simone. I was just existing before you, going through motions, building an empire I didn't even want. What do you want now? This. Min-jae gestured to the penthouse, to the nursery where their daughter slept, to the life they'd built. You, Min-seo. A future that's about more than just survival or power. A future that's about love. Simone rested her head on his shoulder. I never imagined this. When I was 16 and alone in Chicago, when I was working 3 jobs just to eat, when I took that housekeeping position thinking it was just another way to survive, I never imagined I'd end up here. Happy. Safe. Loved. You deserve all of it. Deserve more than I can give you. You give me everything I need. Simone turned to kiss him. You give me home. They sat together as the city lights blazed below them. The same view they'd had on their first real conversation. The same balcony where Min-jae had proposed. The same home where they'd built a life worth living. Thank you, Min-jae said quietly. For what? For staying. For choosing me. For making me believe I could be more than what my life had made me. Thank you for protecting me. For seeing me when everyone else looked through me. For making me feel precious. You are precious. You and Min-seo both. You're my entire world. And he meant it. Min-jae Kang, once known as one of the most dangerous men on the West Coast, had been transformed by love, not weakened, not softened in a way that made him vulnerable, but transformed, made better, made human. All because a humble housekeeper had looked at him and seen someone worth loving. All because he'd looked at her and said 4 words that changed everything. She's not for sale. Those 4 words had started a journey that led here to love, to family, to home. And Min-jae wouldn't change a single moment of it. Not the danger, not the fear, not the violence that had marked their path, because it had all been worth it to end up here. With Simone in his arms and their daughter sleeping peacefully, with a future stretching ahead of them full of possibility, with a love that had survived everything and emerged stronger, she was his, he was hers, and together, they were everything, forever. Thank you for experiencing this Korean Mafia romance story. If this touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more powerful love stories. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment. Was it when Min-jae first called Simone mine, when he walked into that warehouse to save her, or the beautiful ending with their daughter? We want to hear from you. Don't forget to like and share this story with someone who believes in love that conquers all. Until next time, remember, you deserve someone who looks at you the way Min-jae looks at Simone, like you're worth fighting the whole world for.